Oh man, it is hard to imagine that it has been 12 years since the Titans went off air? Ah, Jesus Coon, I am getting old. And yet it's even harder to believe that the Titans Go series has been running for twice as long as the original, despite being a spin-off. Yeah, it's insane, but I'll be real with you here. I've really got no beef with the Titans Go. They do get me to chuckle here and there. But really, who would have guessed that it would have done as well as it has, being primarily I want to say, parody of the original source. And I mean, just look at all this merch it's gotten. And now it's even got its own feature-length film. In theaters. But you know what it doesn't have? Surprisingly. Its own video games. Now, I've already talked about the original console releases, way back before I learned how to make my audio not suck. Though if this video still sounds bad to you, well, that's just my voice. There's not much I can do about that. But getting back to the big screen games, easily the best part of that was it felt like getting to play through a brand new episode of the show, complete with the quirky animations and the original voice actors. Though branding the same title, I kinda have my doubts that the GBA port will be able to pull off the same feats. After all, this was during an era before our console games and handheld games were one and the same. So, with that in mind, let's check out Teen Titans on the Game Boy Advance and see what this game has to offer. Of course, we have to start with the fact that the game opens up with the iconic theme song. Because let's be real, we would hold it against it if it didn't. Because we all still love it. Now moving into the main game, we find that Titan's Tower is under siege by the nefarious Hive. You know, these jokers. As we get our short, but sweet, dialogue bit between our heroes. And you know what? I take it back. As you progress from stage to stage, and during the back and forths with the baddies, Titans on the GBA actually does manage to capture some of that classic Titans charm that its console big brother did so well. Not too shabby. The story is pretty fitting too, with the general premise being that Brother Blood, leader of Hive, is trying to make clones of the Titans. Because... evil! And for any of you that might remember, this dude's a bit stalkerish, especially with Cyborg.
You should have accepted my first offer, Cyborg. I would have made a man out of you. I still could, you know.
So yeah, it's up to our heroes to prevent this disaster of a prequel from coming to fruition. Truly, there are no greater heroes than these. And how do they accomplish this daring feat? Why, by running and flying across 6 vaguely different stages and beating the living crap out of everything that moves, of course. And that's about it. Though you could probably sum up a lot of games like that really, but as far as the levels go, there really isn't that much here to look at. Mind you, they don't look bad, just kinda bland. Plus, they all really do feel the same, suffering from a lot of the same issues, particularly the platforms. But we'll get to that in a moment. Now, what really steals the show has to be the Titans themselves. You get to play as all 5 main Titans from the show, and man, do they look awesome. These are the kind of quality character sprites that are just primed for Burler Bee creations. If only I still had mine. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if when developing this game, they saw how good the heroes looked and went, man, how can we use these more? To which someone said, give them a palette swap and call them clones. Money in the bank. Though I do love that, while probably unintentional, this does give way for the opportunity to recreate iconic fights from one of the best arcs in the show. And if I may show off a bit of my fanboyism, that's awesome! Plus, a small note here, blowing these sprites up to the big screen for this video let me notice a lot of small details too, like how Starfire's pupils vanish when she's flying. Nice touch. Though that all being said, it doesn't negate the shortcomings. Teen Titans GBA is a side-scrolling action platformer. meaning that running around the stage is a huge part of the game. Enter the platforming I mentioned before, or really any horizontal platform going up in the game. Plain and simple, they can be annoying at times. And oddly enough, it's because this game offers a very interesting gameplay mechanic not seen in most games like this. And that's unlimited flight. Yeah, just like in the show, Starfire, Raven, and BB can all fly as much as they want. And I love that. But it completely defeats the entire point of any and all platforming. I mean, really, why would I risk falling into a pit with Robin or Cyborg when I can just fly over it? Also, the collision on these planes keeps forcing me to land against my will whenever I'm controlling Beast Boy, which is extra problematic during boss battles when enemies are moving between all these platforms. So if you're a BB fan, that's a bit of a downer. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the frame rate issues. Yeah, surprisingly, the game can just randomly get choppy at times without seemingly having any cause, other than probably poor optimization. That, or they just can't handle the raw, explosive power of the Titans. But it's probably the optimization. The audio kind of fares the same way. The main draw, of course, is the theme song, which again, sounds great. Plus, I have to give the game some credit for its surprisingly clear voice samples. But everything else is pretty average, with nothing really standing out. Though it does sound a bit like the old Batman games, just, toned back a bit. Really, not much more to say than that. But what I do have a lot to say about is the gameplay, both the good and the bad, which is more than you'd think by just looking at it. Don't let your preconceived notion of the genre fool you. Teen Titans GBA is actually all over the place. I mean, where do I even begin? Well, how about the fact that the game actually plays a lot like another game starring a team of teenage heroes that also downs pizza pie to heal themselves? That's right, the Samurai Pizza Cats.
Samurai Pizza Cats. Oh yeah!
Who do you call when you want some pepperoni?
Nah, of course I'm talking about the Ninja Turtles. Oh, powers that be, let there be a crossover. It's not unthinkable. And which Turtles game does this one play like? Well, how about the first one on the NES? You know, the one that everyone cries about being too hard and is notorious for this stage? Yeah, that TMNT. Teen Titans borrows a very cool mechanic from it, in that at any time, as long as the Titan hasn't been knocked out, you can swap between any of the 5 heroes at will, whether it be to solve puzzles or to fight baddies. Combat-wise, this mechanic works exactly like TMNT, as each hero has their own health and special bar, making swapping between them during combat a good strat to keep from getting KO'd. Plus, it's much easier here, as the Titans in the back will quickly heal up on their own, so a good rotation cycle can pretty much guarantee victory. Unlike TMNT, where, let's face it, only one turtle really mattered and the rest were pretty much just meat shields. Thankfully though, all of the Titans are useful in their own right, with each being more suited for different situations. Like how Raven is great for downing aerial baddies, Cyborg can hit rows of enemies, and Beast Boy has some pretty good crowd control. Though, like me, you'll probably end up sticking to your favorite the majority of the time. Shout out to the best girl. But swapping between characters does keep combat interesting. But where it runs into a few problems is actually outside of it, in the puzzle solving department. Though to be fair, that is a much smaller portion of the game, and I already mentioned how the platforming is basically moot. The majority of the game actually has you running around the stage, primarily looking for the end, with only a few collectibles scattered about off the beaten path. That is, of course, if you can actually figure out which path is the right one in the first place. It's a real shot in the dark. Though you can backtrack and even replay levels to hunt down anything you missed, so extra replayability, that's cool. Our problem comes in the fact that in order to progress past certain obstacles, you need specific Titans, which honestly feels a bit contrived. For example, Robin is required to hack the computers that keep the iron doors shut. But I don't see why Cyborg, a living computer, couldn't do it too. Or why the girl with super strength can't just bust it down. Yeah, I think you get the point. Obviously, this says a lot more about how diverse the Titans really are, and I do understand that it's all for the sake of gameplay, but why I bring this up at all is this. At the end of the game, Teen Titans goes full-on Metroid with an escape from an exploding base, with the biggest obstacles being these stupid magically appearing debris that falls from nowhere. This stuff ended up KOing 3 of my fires and just left me unable to progress. The only time in the game I died, by the way, with literally less than 3 minutes left in the game too. And check this one out too. BB, the only one who can fly through vents, just got KO'd in one. Great. So clearly, the puzzle aspects have some flaws, though that's not to say the combat is perfect or anything either. While the swapping mechanic is cool, the combat is still pretty simple and really a bit unrefined. Basically, it's like this. Small battle pits will occur where enemies will attack you from both sides, but the problem is, there's no way to attack in both directions. Like, at all. Meaning you're absolutely gonna take some unavoidable hits. And I do know that this scenario is pretty common in these type of games, but most of the time, enemies go down pretty fast. Where here, they can take up to 3 full combos or more to drop them. You can of course work around this, to an extent, but these double-sided attacks happen a lot, in every stage, so you might as well get used to it. Toss in the lack of a block or dodge, and it really starts to get a bit annoying. Personally, I really found myself yearning for the ability to duck, to be able to better help with timing attacks, or to avoid those cheap gun guys that take pop shots at you as soon as they appear on screen. Another annoyance that happens way too often. And if you're playing on an actual GBA, it can be kinda hard to see those bullets too. But even so, all in all, the combat really isn't that bad. It's just pretty basic. It actually feels reminiscent of classic action games from the original Game Boy, even going as far as having AI that's dumb as bricks, with most baddies just standing around waiting to die. And your clones? Clearly they don't know what to do when you're both airborne, so that makes things simpler. Also, the game just hands out health like Willy Wonka hands out candy, and rotating characters pretty much negates any cheap hit damage that you might suffer, which is my subtle way of saying the game is really, really easy. And you know what? That's okay. It's pretty clear that Teen Titans on the GBA was made for younger audiences, and not the early Nintendo days younger audiences. Seriously, who thought kids could beat this? And the lack of a hard mode should be proof enough of who this game was ultimately aimed at. And honestly, for the target demographic, I think this game's not bad. I would have definitely enjoyed this as a kid, because the combat is simple, but still has enough variety to be enjoyable. The collectibles offer up a bit of replayability without going completely overboard, and of course the Titans themselves are just as entertaining as ever. Toss in some nice sprites and some okay music, and you've got yourself a solid kids game that I think young fans of the Titans or Titans Go will enjoy. Though not so much that you should hunt down a GBA to play it on if you don't already have that option. And for us older fans, seeing the Titans again is great, and I love the sprite work here, but it's definitely not a must play. The game does have some minor issues like cheap hits, which are discouraging, but they're not deal breakers. What really holds it back, that it's simply going to be too easy for anyone who's old enough to be a Titan themselves. Clocking in at just about 3 hours of play, there really isn't much here for veteran players, which, considering when the Titans were on the air, would probably be the majority of their fans now. But if you're looking for something easy and nostalgic with a fair bit of enjoyability, then this one might be for you. Otherwise, you might want to stick to the console version. Hey my fellow Titans, Spammer D here again, looking for an excuse to say that sweet catchphrase. But before I do, I just gotta remind everyone of what it really takes to be a Teen Titan, and that is to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter. Plus, tell me down below whether or not you're a fan of the Teen Titans, Titans Go, or both. So now that you know what you need to do, Titans, go!